Up until now, we have learned how to save single values inside a variable. For example, if we wanted to save a number, we could say something like this: int a is equal to, let's say, 5. But if we want to save a list of values inside a variable, for that we have an option in Java called arrays. And here is the syntax for saving an array. For example, if I want to have an array of strings, I can say a string with a pair of square brackets. Let's call it names is equal to new string with a pair of square brackets. Inside the square bracket, I can define the size of my array. For example, it will contain 5 names. This new keyword is simple English. It means that we are defining something new. In this case, we are defining a new array. But how do we put values inside our array? Well, we can say something like this: the name of our array with a pair of square brackets. Inside the square brackets, I can have my index. For example, 2. Indexes in Java starts from 0, so if we put 2 in here, it means that we are accessing the third element. I can set a value for that element. For example, let's say Mason. As simple as that. Now, the third element in our array is Mason. I can set the value for each element one by one. For example, let's do that in here. Our array size is 5, and we have set 5 values for our elements. The same way, I can access to the elements in my array and, for example, do some operation on them. In here, let's just print the third element in our array. I can say names with an index of 2. If we try to run our application, we should see Madeline because that's the third item in our arrays. The same way, we can define an array, for example, for integers or maybe doubles. Let's create an integer array. I can say the data type, which is int, a pair of a square bracket, let's say numbers, is equal to new int with a pair of a square bracket. Inside the square bracket, I need to define the size of my array. This is one way of defining your array, to set the size at the beginning and after that assign the values. But the other way is to just simply put a pair of curly braces and inside the curly braces define or pass your values. For example, I can pass the numbers from 1 to 5. And if we try to get access to, for example, the second element, we can say something like this: numbers with an index of 1, which stands for the second element. Let's try running that. You can see that the second element is 2. If you want, you can have access to all of your items by using a for loop. Let's delete this 3 line of code and create a for loop. For, we need an integer called I or whatever you want to call it. Initialize it to 0, I less than, let's say, 5, and I plus plus. I can say print the names with an index of I. This way, every time we loop through this array, we are printing the ith element. Let's try running that. You can see that all the names has been printed. But what if we don't know the size of our array? For example, if we are receiving some data from our web server or maybe database, we don't know the size of our array. Well, instead of passing a number, you can say the name of your array, which is names in this case, dot length. It will return the size of your array until I is less than names.length and continue looping. If I try to run that once again, I can see the same result. These are simple arrays in Java, but those have some limitations. For example, after the definition, you can't change the size of your arrays. For example, if I say names with an index of 5, which stands for the 6th item, I can't assign a value to it. Let's say Jerry. It's not giving me any compile time error, but if you hover over to this yellow warning in here. It says that array index is out of bounds. It means that an element with this index does not exist in your array. And if I try to do that, of course, I will get some warnings, maybe exceptions. And as you can see, array index out of bound exception. So there is one limitation to arrays, simple arrays in Java. Also in programming, we can say that the size of simple arrays in Java are immutable after the definition. Also, simple arrays in Java are not much flexible. For that reason, we are not going to use that much of simple arrays. Instead, we are going to use things like lists and array lists and other kind of collections in Java, which we will work on after the object-oriented session, because I think that's a good point to learn about them. But for now, we are just going to work with these simple arrays. Okay, let's have a quick practice and make sure that all of us are at the same page. I'm going to simulate a list of contacts which has a contact name and also a contact number. For that, I'm going to create two simple Java array. Then I'm going to ask the user to enter name so that we could show the contact's number to the user. For that, let's print a message in here. And because we are receiving user's input, I need to define a scanner. I can say string name is equal to scanner.next. Then I'm going to create a for loop in order to search for the name that user has entered. I can say int I equals 0. We have seen this for loop a couple of times, so I'm not going to explain that much unless I is less than our arrays dot length and I plus plus. Increment I by 1. Let's put an if statement in here. If names with an index of I, if it's equal to the name that user has entered, then print the equivalent number. I can say numbers with an index of I. As simple as that. I think I have wrote the right code, so let's test that. Please enter name. Let's say Maysam. You can see that the Maysam's number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's run it once again to make sure that it's working. Enter name, Madeline. And Madeline is 4th element. Her number is this one in here. Okay, seems like our application is working fine. Okay, I think that's enough talking about simple arrays in Java. In the next video, finally, we are going to start talking about object-oriented programming. We will talk about a lot of stuff like Java classes and maybe inheritance, constructors, polymorphism, and all the topics that are related to object-oriented programming. And that's going to help you a lot if you don't know about object-oriented programming, and it will add much more to your Android toolbox to know the object-oriented programming. So see you in the next video.